will welcome General Chance Saltzman as the second Chief of Space Operations of the United States Space Force and pay special tribute to the first Chief of Space Operations of the United States Space Force, General J. Raymond, on the occasion of his retirement from active duty. The host for today's ceremony is the Secretary of the Air Force, the Honorable Frank Kendall. We are also honored to have members of the official party, the Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin III, and the Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark A. Milley. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. In battles of old, the Color Guard led the charge, braving enemy fire to inspire their fellow warriors to victory. Escorting our nation's colors and the United States Space Force flag is the United States Air Force Honor Guard. This 220-member ceremonial unit is made up of various career fields from both the air and space forces that have served in military conflicts and humanitarian efforts throughout the world. Marching before you with pride is the United States Air Force Honor Guard. A distinctive feature of military ceremonies is the formal presentation of command to the reviewing official. After the commander of troops presents the command, musical honors will be played in honor of the Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin III. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the advancement of the colors and the playing of our national anthem. The Air Force Chief of Chaplains, Chaplain Major General Randall E. Kitchens, will now deliver the invocation.
I invite you to join me in prayer. Let us pray. Almighty God, we are thankful for this day and milestone in history as we commemorate and witness this change of responsibility ceremony for the United States Space Force. We celebrate our new U.S. military service and this change as General Raymond retires as the first Chief of Space Operations and General Saltzman assumes the responsibility as the second Chief of Space Operations. Lord, we're thankful for the leadership, service, and excellence that General Raymond has given during his time of building this new Space Force. Be with him, Molly, and family in the days ahead, and grant them blue skies with favoring winds. We ask your blessing now upon General Saltzman, Jennifer, Sarah, and John as they embark on this incredible journey of building this new Space Force. Grant him the wisdom, courage, vision, patience, and endurance needed for this vital mission ahead. Almighty God, be with our guardians around the globe, serving freedom's watch for our nation. Lead them in these days of service and excellence, knowing that our nation is in good hands because our guardians are serving and standing the watch. Bless now this ceremony, our United States Space Force, and all that they do. We pray this in their holy name. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin III.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's always great to see so many of our outstanding guardians. And I'm glad to be here with Secretary Kendall. Frank, thank you for all that you do for our airmen, our guardians, and their families. Also, I want to thank General Milley for his outstanding leadership of the Joint Force. Mark, we remain grateful. Let me give a special welcome to the man of the hour, General J. Raymond, and to his family. His wife, Molly, has been a tremendous champion for military families for nearly 4 decades. And I want to thank their children, Christina, Amy, and Gary, for serving right alongside their father. Now, General Milley will have more to say about Jay and his many years of service to our nation. But let me start with a few words about what General Raymond's leadership has meant for our newest military service. Jay was the very first member of the United States Space Force. He stood up the first new service branch for our military in more than 70 years. He oversaw the first budget request, the first doctrine document, and he helped recruit tough and innovative warfighters to be his teammates. And then he figured out what to call them. He chose Guardians, and I think that's the absolute right name for this great force. He laid the foundations for the culture and the traditions that will define this service for decades to come. And you know what? He did all of that, and he made it look easy. Jay, I know that you're proud to be the first Guardian, but even prouder to have grown this force to nearly 15,000 Guardians and civilians who are fiercely dedicated to keeping our country safe in this vast domain. So thank you, General Raymond, and well done. And of course, today marks another milestone for the United States Space Force with its first change of responsibility ceremony. And there's no one better to take the helm than General Chance Saltzman. He knows his way around the space domain. He's operated satellites. He's spent many nights at the Joint Space Operations Center doing ICBM alerts. And for the past 2 years, he's helped this new service get off the ground as a Deputy Chief of Space Operations. So we're lucky to have General Saltzman take the colors today. And he wouldn't be here, of course, without his wife of 30 years, Jennifer, and their kids, John and Sarah. So I want to thank them as well for their service and for supporting their father in this next chapter. Now, the United States leads the way in space, but in recent years, the competition has picked up. It has become a contested environment, and China and Russia are investing in their own space capabilities. Now, as our national defense strategy has outlined, the People's Republic of China is the only competitor with the intent to reshape the international order and increasingly the power to do it. And that's why the PRC is the department's pacing challenge. And today's aggressive Russia is an acute threat to our interest and our values. So to defend our country and prevent conflict, we will rely on integrated deterrence. And integrated deterrence means working seamlessly across all domains and across the full spectrum of conflict, in lockstep with our unparalleled network of allies and partners, to make it clear to any potential adversary that the risk and the cost of aggression far outweigh any conceivable gains. And the United States Space Force is crucial to integrated deterrence. That means space systems that are ever more resilient. It means a relentless pursuit of innovation and technological advancements that will help us maintain and expand our edge. It means shaping norms for space activity to make it more costly for any would-be aggressor to violate those rules of the road. And it means working together with our partners and allies to keep building our collective strength in space. You know, 60 years ago, President Kennedy challenged our country to seize the initiative in space, saying that, quote, "We have vowed that we shall not see it governed by a hostile flag of conquest, but by a banner of freedom and peace." The United States is the preeminent power in space, and I know that our guardians will keep it that way. You are the bold ones who protect us from the threats from the heavens, the bold ones who will forge the way ahead, and the bold ones who will always be there, always above. So thank you, General Raymond and General Saltzman and the United States Space Force. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of the Air Force, the Honorable Frank Kendall.
Good morning. Welcome to all our distinguished guests, family, and friends. And thank you all for being here for your unwavering support to the United States Space Force. It's a perfect morning to have our first United States Space Force Chief of Space Operations change of responsibility. Secretary Austin, thank you for being here with us to celebrate this momentous day for the Guardians. I know that you are always here to support our department and their families, and we appreciate everything you do. General Milley, Holly Ann, your support for our airmen and guardians and their families is steadfast and also deeply appreciated. Your presence with us today reflects the fact that the Space Force's capabilities, and especially our guardians, are critical to joint warfighting. Chief Tuberman, you're still holding the torch as the Space Force's senior enlisted leader. Thanks to you and to Rachel for helping General Saltzman and his family in this critical transition. Now to Jay Raymond and Salty Saltzman. I'm incredibly honored to host this ceremony for your change of responsibility with your family, friends, and colleagues here to share in this moment. As the Secretary of the Air Force, I get to attend some pretty historic events, but this one is right up there at the top. I'm proud to work with these humble, incredibly capable, and approachable warriors and leaders whom we are celebrating here today. First, to Jay Raymond, the father of the Space Force. As the first Chief of Space Operations, you shaped Guardian's culture, created the Guardian ideal, brought the department its newest service, put it into existence, and is forging its unique identity. I also know how much Molly has done for Airmen and Guardians during your decades of service. Molly, you have been such an incredible light to all of us, not only spouses and families, but to Guardians and those others in uniform as well. Today is as much a celebration of Molly as it is for Jay. So thank you both for everything you have done for Guardians and their families. Jay, you did more for the Space Force in its first 3 years than anyone could have asked of you. You stood up a new service without the preparation time that you had intended or hoped for. And as Secretary Austin has noted, you made it look easy. One of the pleasant surprises I found when I came back into government service was how much progress the Space Force had made. During the 4 years I was outside of government, Jay and his team made incredible progress in establishing a totally new enterprise, one that would have to be small in size, but enormous in importance and in mission. The Space Force would have to carry all the load associated with being a military service without anywhere near the resources associated with a traditional American military service. Jay and his team have met this challenge and positioned the Space Force for success. You grew from a service of 0 to now almost 15,000 Guardians. For a few months, Jay was the only Guardian. Luckily, you always had Molly by your side,
and Chief Troubleman follow you shortly thereafter. Today, 15,000 Guardians, and growing. This December, we'll be celebrating the Space Force's 3rd birthday. We'll have General Saltzman as your successor. The Space Force that I walked in on 15 months ago, the one that General Saltzman will be stepping up to lead in a few minutes, are a living, breathing testament to the vision, professionalism, and will to succeed that J. Raymond brought to his role as the first Chief of Space Operations. Jay, I'll miss your friendship and support, but I know that Salty has a tremendous foundation for his new position because of the work that you and your team accomplished in the Space Force's first 3 years. Thank you. Next to Salty. You have some big shoes to fill, but I know you're ready. We are lucky to have you as the second Chief of Space Operations. Jay has laid the foundation for you, and now I know that you are ready to go charge full speed ahead on operationalizing and transforming the Space Force based on your strategic, operational, and tactical experience and while deployed. As we know, this is a team and family effort, and I'm excited to work with both you and Jennifer as we forge ahead into the next several years of building the Space Force. Salty, you are more than ready to take on the responsibilities we expect of CSO number 2. And I can't wait to work with you as we continue to take care of our Guardians and their families and to modernize the Space Force to meet the pacing challenge, as the Secretary indicated. Under Salty, the Space Force will fulfill its destiny to become the great protector and the great enabler of America's joint force and the key to making integrated deterrence a success. One team, one fight, Semper Supra.
Ladies and gentlemen, Secretary Kendall will, for the first time, symbolically execute the passing of the Chief of Space Operations flag from General Raymond to General Saltzman, appointing him as the second Chief of Space Operations of the United States Space Force. Historically, the passing of a flag was accomplished in front of the unit so all could see and witness the changing of leadership. This symbolic tradition first began in the Department of the Air Force with the first Air Force Chief of Staff, General Carl A. Spaatz, and the first Secretary of the Air Force, the Honorable W. Stuart Symington, in September 1947. In keeping with this tradition, the passing of the Chief of Space Operations flag also affirms the commitment of our civilian and military leaders working together to better the institution. The flag is entrusted to the Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force, Roger A. Toberman, symbolically expressing the special trust and responsibility afforded to the Space Force's enlisted members. Today, this symbolic Space Force tradition begins as General Raymond now relinquishes responsibility to General Saltzman, who accepts the responsibility as the second Chief of Space Operations. By direction of the President of the United States of America, General Chance Saltzman is appointed as the Chief of Space Operations of the United States Space Force, effective 2 November 2022. Following the tradition of the second Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Hoyt S. Vandenberg, General Raymond decided the Chief of Space Operations service cap should be set apart from other officers as the leader of the Space Force. He approved an embellishment of the hat band of the service cap with the Delta, Globe, and Orbit. At this time, Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force Toberman will present General Saltzman with the distinct service cap. General Saltzman, we are pleased to present you with the following letter from the Vice President of the United States. It reads, Dear General Saltzman, congratulations on your selection as the second Chief of Space Operations for the United States Space Force and the newest member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. As the Chair of the National Space Council, I look forward to working with you to ensure the U.S. Space Force is positioned to support our nation, particularly in light of the growing threats to our space enterprise and the need to promote responsible behaviors in space. The current and future Guardian workforce will be shaped by your leadership. I look forward to further discussions about the challenges and opportunities facing military space operations. Sincerely, Vice President Kamala D. Harris. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the posting of the colors. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the second Chief of Space Operations of the United States Space Force, General Chance Saltzman.
Well, thank you all so much. It means the world to us that you're here to celebrate this tremendous milestone. Secretary Austin, Chairman Milley, distinguished visitors, family, friends, and guardians, thank you for being here with us today. Secretary Kendall, thank you, sir, for presiding. Your tireless advocacy and focus on the threat are just what the Space Force needs. and I'm grateful for your leadership. Thank you as well to Vice President Harris for her kind words, and thank you to those members of Congress for making time to be with us today. I appreciate the continued support from our guardians for our national leadership, both in the executive branch and in the Congress. As I have stated in my confirmation hearing, at the retirement dinner last night, and again at my promotion ceremony this morning, because it cannot be said enough, thank you, Jay and Molly Raymond. Today, they are concluding 38 years of distinguished service to our nation, and these last 3 years have probably been the most challenging. But I would also assert that they're the most critical, as they've done the heavy lifting to establish the Space Force. Their passion, dedication, and vision have built a solid foundation, and now it's up to those of us who have benefited from their mentoring and leadership to continue the critical missions of the Space Force. And although they are big shoes to fill, Jennifer and I are honored to have the opportunity to follow in your footsteps. Thanks, sir. To be on this stage with this incredible lineup of national leadership is truly a humbling experience for me. But I hope these leaders will forgive me for saying that the turnout of family and friends to help Jennifer and I mark this occasion is far more humbling. I won't try to offer my thanks by name at this time, as I fear I might forget someone, and there are simply too many to go around. However, I will not miss the opportunity to publicly say thank you to Mom and Dad, Jennifer's mom, Sandy. Thanks for making the trip. You guys are the bedrock of support, and you've helped me and the family countless times over the years. Thank you. But most importantly, Jennifer, John, Sarah, none of this is possible without you. Thanks for being the best family anyone could ever have. And finally, to the Guardians here today, around the world, you will hear plenty from me in the coming weeks, months, and years, so I'll keep this short and to the point. The world is becoming an increasingly dangerous place, and preserving U.S. national security interests in space is growing harder every day. Without the space capabilities you are designing, building, protecting, and operating, the Joint Force will not be capable of accomplishing its missions. A resilient, ready, and combat-capable Space Force is indispensable to deterrence today, tomorrow, and every day after that. And in the worst case, if deterrence fails, the Space Force will be an indispensable component of our joint force at war. Becoming the resilient and effective combat force that we need will not be an easy or a short-lived task. We're going to need your ideas, your energy, your discipline, and your adaptability. We will need you to live our core values of character, courage, connection, and commitment to embody the Guardian spirit every day. My goal will be to provide you the resources, tools, and training and experiences needed to unlock your massive potential. You have my commitment that I will work relentlessly to make the Space Force the combat-ready force that our nation needs. So get ready, because I'm going to need your best as well. And I'll conclude where I began. Thank you, senior leaders, family, friends. I'm truly humbled and honored by this opportunity, and I'm excited to serve with you and for you as the Chief of Space Operations of the United States Space Force. Now let's get to work. Semper Supra.
Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Air Force Honor Guard will now pass and review in honor of General Saltzman. It is customary for the senior official to receive the pass and review. However, in this ceremony, Secretary Austin has deferred this honor to the Second Chief of Space Operations of the United States Space Force, General Chance Saltzman. As a reminder, everyone should stand as the colors pass before them, and military members in uniform should salute.
This concludes the pass and review.
Please be seated. As we welcomed General Saltzman today, we now, with pride, honor General Raymond as he retires from the United States Space Force. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark A. Milley.
Good morning, everyone. And it's very, very difficult in just a few minutes to summarize 38 years of a single officer's career. So I promise only to take 40 years to do that. You know, I was observing some of the models that you see in front of you, and I said, Jay, why is it you put your guitar up there? And he looked at me, he said, Chairman, that would be a satellite. And I said, how come the Navy made it into this thing with a submarine? And he said, Chairman, that would be the X-37. So clearly, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, as a lifelong infantryman, has a lot to learn about space. And I can tell you, we are incredibly lucky as a country to have Jay Raymond to have been our first Chief of Space Operations. And he has paved the way. He is very much a pioneer. And I want to thank all of the guests that are here today. We have former secretaries, we have former senators and congressmen, we have current senators and congressmen, we have our Secretary of Defense, we have our Secretary of the Air Force. We have so many dignitaries here that it's impossible to list you all. And I want to thank you all, though, for coming. But only 3 of you in this entire crowd have actually traveled to space. And I would like former Senator Nelson and the other 2 astronauts to please stand to be recognized. And I would also like to recognize Elon Musk, who's here, who needs no introduction, certainly by me. But what he symbolizes in reality is the combination of the civil and military cooperation and teamwork that makes the United States the most powerful country in space. So, Elon, thank you for making yourself present here today. You know, Jay Raymond is a man with a distinguished record of competence, courage, and character. And if you know Jay, you know that he bleeds orange, and that is the orange of Clemson. He is a Clemson graduate. Even though his entire family graduated from the United States Military Academy going back to 1865, Jay Raymond upped his game and decided he would go to Clemson. He's also a deep lover of football. And everywhere he goes, he talks about how great Clemson football is. And in fact, it's so great, he calls it the Harvard of the South. So, Jay, I don't know if you know about Harvard's football team, but you might want to check with your son, who went to Yale. And if it's really the Harvard of the South, if what he means is that Clemson is truly the #1 school, then he should have probably called it the Princeton of the South, Jay. I couldn't let that go. Sorry. Hey, look, in all seriousness, Jay is pretty famous, and not only in the military, but in the country. Of course, he was hand-selected to pick or to be the head of a brand new service. And I think he was also hand-selected because of his choice of uniform. He is wearing the same uniform that Steve Carroll may have worn last night at your dinner at the Netflix show of Space Force. But look it, Jay Raymond wasn't only born with a brush of stardom. A few years ago, he was in Japan, and it was a very humbling experience for Jay. He was traveling at an airport, and he noticed that a lot of Japanese were looking at him, and they were pointing at him. And when he got to the gate, he heard people mention that Bruce Willis was there. So Jay grew up loving space, so of course he was very excited to meet Bruce Willis. He always admired the movie Armageddon, and he wanted to meet the man who saved the United States from the asteroid. So Jay kept looking around for Bruce, and all the Japanese kept looking at Jay. Now, Jay is pretty sharp. Jay is the kind of guy you want leading Space Force. He's pretty quick on the uptake, right? He's really sharp. And he finally realized that it was he who was Bruce Willis. So thank you. Thank you, Jay, for being so sharp. That's perhaps why you went to Clemson instead of West Point. So you know, Jay commissioned in 1984 out of ROTC. And in that year, 9,190 officers commissioned. And because of the high-tech world we live in today, I was able to figure that out by going on Siri. And in a matter of seconds, Siri gave me that answer, 9,190. I asked the J1 of the Joint Force. It took 3 weeks to get that answer. So Siri, 9,190. And we now know also from Siri, so this is totally reliable, we also know from Siri that 38 officers in that class of 1984 have made general officer, and only 2 have made the rank of 4-star general officer, and Jay was the first. I did the math, and of course I was an advanced math major, and of this group, by my math, that comes out to 0.0002. Elon can check that, 0.0002. And that is a likelihood, according to my West Point classmates, of 1 1/50th of 1% chance. Now, I have no idea what those stats mean, but it means it's really small. It's a tiny chance to make the rank of 4-star. And it's even tinier to make the rank of 4-star in a service that doesn't even exist at the time. So that's pretty impressive. In fact, by my math, again, this was Princeton math, Jay. By my math, Clemson has a greater chance of winning the NFL championship than you do of becoming a 4-star in a Space Force that didn't exist before you came. You know, since President Kennedy made his famous 1962 speech, we chose to go to the moon speech. Over 600 people have gone to space, but there's only been one chief of space operations to date, and that's been Jay Raymond. And now Salty is number 2. So to both of them, to the pioneer and his follower, and both of you are pioneers, I want to give you both a rounding applause. We are here in this hangar at Andrews, literally witnessing history. It might as well be 1947 as it is today. That is what you are witnessing. You are witnessing the divorce of the Air Force from the Army, and now you're witnessing the divorce of the Space Force from the Air Force. So you've witnessed 2 divorces in a matter of only 80 years. So that's pretty good. And this divorce, though, is not total, because this divorce still belongs to the Department of the Air Force. So I'll give you credit as a graduate of West Point to keep them together. Very well done, Secretary. You know, in all seriousness, Jay started out his career as a missileer, and he was a Minuteman crewman on an ICBM up in North Dakota, and he was in the midst of the Cold War in those days, and his task and purpose was to prevent great power nuclear war between us and then the Soviet Union. That task, and the tens of thousands who have gone before him, and that task of the tens of thousands that are still out there today, as we sit here in this hangar, in those missile fields, that remains the single most important task that they have, and that's been like that since really the 1940s. And I will tell you that the role of Space Force is no less important. The role of Space Force now, under Salty's leadership and under Jay's pioneering leadership, is to do exactly that. It's to make sure that we are the dominant power. We are the power that has the most capable Space Force in order to do a single thing, and that is to prevent great power war. The one thing this world doesn't need is a great power war. And Salty, it's up to you. It's up to all of us in the Joint Force. Jay has passed the colors to you, and that is your critical task. Jay transitioned to the space world as a Space Operations Center controller, where he also then worked on ICBMs and ICBM tests. And shortly after 11 September, that fateful day in history, Jay helped deploy space control systems to get the much-needed capabilities that we needed on the ground, that we as infantry and special forces and Marines needed on the ground, because we fight as a joint force. You see, armies and navies and Marines and air forces don't go to war, and neither do space forces. Nations go to war, and we go to war as a joint force, and Space Force is critical to that. And Jay Raymond literally wrote the plans, literally wrote the doctrine, and literally developed the capabilities that we see deployed today, and Salty's going to carry that on. As a general officer, Jay was then the vice commander of the 5th Air Force in Japan during the 2011 tsunami and the Fukushima nuclear disaster, which we also know so well, which was the most severe nuclear accident since the 1986 Chernobyl catastrophe. And Jay handled that with incredible skill, compassion, and empathy. He also coordinated the response and helped bring tremendous U.S. military support to the people of Japan. And I will tell you, Jay, you're not only famous for walking through airports, you are also famous in Japan for the help for the millions of lives that you in fact saved, millions of Japanese lives you in fact saved. So you are a hero there in many, many ways. He then went on to lead Space Force Command, and then Space Command, and now U.S. Space Force, which he just gave up. He's commanded at every level, from flight all the way up to service chief. He's impressed his bosses, he's impressed his peers, but most of all, he's impressed his subordinates. He was personally selected to lead the Space Force because of that 360 evaluation, because he was so respected by so many people in all directions. He was the right guy to push us into space. He was the right guy to give birth to the Space Force. He understands not only the operational role of the warfighter, but he also understands the American role in space. I will tell you that Jay's courage, his commitment, his compassion is incredible. But I will also tell you that not only is his grit and courage and compassion and commitment, it's his integrity that matters. As a military leader, Jay knows what I'm talking about. He knows that as a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that it was he and his spine, and it was the spines of each member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that mattered when it mattered. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. He always took care of his people. He always maintained his oath to the Constitution. He was always competent, and he was always committed to this great nation. And how does all that happen? It doesn't happen by accident. It happens because he was born into a great family. The qualities and skills that Jay Raymond has demonstrated throughout his life, his love of country, his direction, his passion, came first, of course, from his parents. He was molded then by his brothers and sisters and peers and mentors, and shaped by his military training and his experience and his coaches. He comes from a long lineage of military service, as I said, dating back to 1865, when his great-great-great-grandfather, Charles Raymond, graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point. And everyone went to West Point since then. In fact, when his great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather graduated from West Point in 1865, the Raymond family since then has an unbroken record of 157 consecutive years of military service in uniform. If you consider the awards, if you consider the sacrifice of not only the individuals but his family, it's an enormous contribution to our country. He also comes from a culture of space exploration. It was Jay's great-great-grandfather, Brigadier General Charles Raymond, who commanded the expedition to Tasmania to measure how long it took Venus to transit the sun. Now, I'm not sure why you'd go to Tasmania to figure out how long it takes to figure out Venus to the sun, but he did it, and he passed along those genes to you. So well done. I don't write this, I just read it sometimes, Jay. So here, I guess here's the kicker. They used the measurement from Venus to transit to the sun to calculate the distance between the Earth and the sun. I thought we already knew that by that time, but I guess not. I guess it was a Raymond who figured that out. And then what does the guy do? What does Brigadier General Charles Raymond do? He goes and teaches astronomy at West Point. That's perfect. So that's the legacy of the Raymond family in space. Can't make this up. But in all seriousness, it's a tremendous legacy of family to service, because in between there's a lot of infantrymen, artillerymen, and armor officers that fought in ground combat and understand the crucible of the blood and the pain that went along with 157 years of service. But not only does he get it from his ancestral family, he gets it from his immediate family, from Jay's wife. He met Molly back in the day at their first duty station in North Dakota. And Molly was the only woman in all of North Dakota at the time. Molly told me that. I didn't. That wasn't written here. She told me that. And then they got married in 1987. And then they moved together to Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. And Jay, of course, at that point was familiar with military lifestyle and challenges, but it was a new experience for Molly. They moved to California. It was tough. It was hard on them, and she dearly missed her family back home. There were challenges, as there always is, for any military family, and there was challenges no less for Molly as a new spouse. Molly cares deeply about assisting military families, about helping them through the challenge of service, the challenges of being a young spouse in the military. She helped so many families over the years in all of the commands that we can't really name all of them here today. But she never passes up an opportunity to help. Molly is one of those people who always reaches her hand out. She's always helpful to no matter who she sees. She's always the one who is taking care of the other. Molly is so selfless, it's incredible, that they have been married now for almost 35 years, and she has been a total selfless servant to our nation without a single dime of pay. So Molly, thank you so much for what you do. And Jay and Molly have raised an amazing family. They've got two wonderful daughters and a son. Christina is currently also working to help others, working to help troops, and she works for the Wounded Warrior Project. Amy is also helping in another incredible career as a teacher. And teachers are so underrated in our country and underpaid that it's incredible. But she's a dedicated third-grade teacher. So to both Christina and Amy, who's helping in the Wounded Warrior Project and as a teacher, thanks to both of you for what you do. And Gary plays football at that other great, renowned, world-class football school called Yale. So Gary, if I could have you stand up just so people could take a look at how big you are. There. So Gary, I want you to know that your dad built that guitar just for you. So look at families, our spouses and our children serve and sacrifice in so many ways, way more than we do. To our families and to our spouses and our children and our grandchildren, they think every minute of every day is like the first 20 minutes of Private Ryan. And I can tell you that we in uniform know what we're doing on a given day, but our families don't. And for them, it's a bit of a mystery. And for them, their service and their sacrifice matter way more than ours do. So to represent all the families of all of our serving soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, and of course, Space Guardians, I want to say thank you to the Raymond family. Jay, you have made a lasting impact, you and your family, going all the way back to 1865. You and your family have made a lasting impact on this country. As I've noted, you're a man of integrity. You're a man of competence, commitment, character. You're a man of patriotism. You're a devoted father and husband and a dedicated leader. You've sacrificed much for the ideals of this nation. And most importantly, Jay, you have maintained your oath to the idea that is America, the idea that is contained in our Constitution, the idea that is very simple and yet powerful, the idea that simply says that no matter who you are, and it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter if you're male or you're female, something in between, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're black or you're white, it doesn't matter if you're Asian or Indian, doesn't matter if you're Catholic or Protestant, Muslim or Jew, doesn't matter what your last name is, doesn't matter where you came from. What matters is you're an American, and we are all Americans, and every single one of us is born free and equal. And J. Raymond, you have maintained that oath to that document, that idea that is America, and there is no greater thanks to we as a nation can give you today than to make sure that we carry on that oath just like you did. So thank you so much. So Jay, on behalf of the entire nation, thanks so much for what you've done for our entire country, and I salute you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as Secretary Austin presents the Defense Distinguished Service Medal to General Raymond. Attention to orders. General John W. Raymond, United States Space Force, distinguished himself by exceptionally meritorious service in a duty of great responsibility as Chief of Space Operations, United States Space Force, from September 2020 to November 2022. During this period, his strive and strategic vision were pivotal in not only establishing the first United States military service in more than 70 years, but in designing and building the service needed to meet the National Defense Strategy's space objectives. His unrelenting focus on mission resulted in publication of the Space Force's first doctrine document, which takes a clear-eyed approach to space as a warfighting domain. General Raymond oversaw the submission of the first independent budget request for space, identifying more than $15 billion of transferred funding across the Department of Defense to resource the Space Force, while realigning 14 Air Force installations under the department. He led the creation of a new human capital strategy in the Guardian Ideal, which documents a plan to recruit and develop bold, well-trained, and fully empowered individuals, and is the guiding document for Space Force Guardians. Under his leadership, the Space Force was designated the 18th member of the intelligence community, which aligns the service with other members of the Defense Intelligence Enterprise. Finally, he successfully oversaw the launch, fielding and operation, sustainment, and future investment of more than $184 billion of space capabilities in support of national security, civil, and commercial space sectors. Over his career, General Raymond's collaborative approach to leadership through war and peace extensively contributed to the improvement of both the air and space forces and the nation. The distinctive accomplishments of General Raymond culminated a long and distinguished career in the service of his country and reflect great credit upon himself, the United States Space Force, and the Department of Defense. Please remain standing as Secretary Austin presents the Department of Defense Medal for Distinguished Public Service to Milley A. Raymond. Attention to orders. Mrs. Milley A. Raymond is recognized for distinguished public service in support of the members of the United States Armed Forces From December 2019 to October 2022, Mrs. Raymond's character has been an exemplar for the role of guardian spouses and families and the role they play in national security. Her commitment to the military lifestyle is a cornerstone to her family's success. Tremendous courage is required to lead the spouses in a new service, and Mrs. Raymond has courageously walked that path not traveled since the establishment of the Air Force in 1947. Most importantly, she has created a culture of connection for all guardian spouses that will endure past her tenure as the first ever Chief of Space Operations spouse. As the first Space Force spouse, Mrs. Raymond participated in Department of the Air Force engagements with over 40 foreign air chiefs and spouses. Her influential leadership advanced lasting partnerships that will positively impact the United States government and its allies as space emerges as the next warfighting domain. Mrs. Raymond leveraged her voice to help key policymakers hear the voices of all the Guardian families across the Space Force and facilitated meaningful change in quality of life programs. As a Joint Chief spouse, she offered critical guidance while serving on more than 10 advocacy committees. The distinctive accomplishments of Mrs. Raymond reflect great credit upon herself and the Department of Defense. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing as General Milley retires General Raymond. Department of the Air Force, Washington, District of Columbia, Special Order Number ACG 000060, dated 24 June 2022. By order of the Secretary of the Air Force, Chief of Space Operations of the United States Space Force, General John W. Raymond, is retired from active duty effective 31 December 2022 after 38 years of faithful and honorable duty. Please be seated. General Raymond, we are pleased to present you with the following certificate from our Commander-in-Chief. It reads, I extend my personal gratitude and the sincere appreciation of a grateful nation to you for your patriotic service to our country. Your bravery and dedication in our armed forces helped protect your fellow Americans during a critical moment in our history and contributed to a world of greater security and growing prosperity. Your devotion to duty, honor, and country, in keeping with the long traditions of the finest military in the world, embodied the American ideal of selfless service. Our nation owes you an incredible debt. Your commitment and the example you set will inspire future generations to serve with pride and to keep our country secure. You represent the best of our nation, and I join our fellow Americans in saluting your honorable service. I wish you happiness and success in your next chapter. Signed, Joseph R. Biden, Jr., Commander-in-Chief. We are also pleased to present you with the following certificate from the Vice President of the United States. It reads, "Dear General Raymond, I wish you the warmest congratulations on your retirement. Thank you for your 38 years of service in the United States Air Force and United States Space Force. I know the 4 generations of military officers in your family would be proud of how your distinguished service has exemplified your family's legacy of service to our nation. Your leadership in bringing a new military service to life as the first Chief of Space Operations for the United States Space Force will make an impact for generations to come. As the chair of the National Space Council, I enjoyed our engagements and appreciated your tireless work to highlight the critical efforts of the Guardian workforce and their families. Thank you for making our nation, our planet, and space safer for us all. I wish you and Molly all the best in your future endeavors. Sincerely, Vice President Kamala D. Harris." Along with congratulatory letters from the President and Vice President, General Raymond has also received congratulatory letters from former presidents, former secretaries of defense, and awards from the Army and Navy. These will be displayed for viewing in the reception area. General Milley will now present Mrs. Raymond with a certificate of appreciation from the United States Space Force. Mrs. Raymond, your commitment to the Space Force, your family, and your spouse's profession during his career has been a model for others to follow. For this, we are forever grateful. With our deep appreciation, admiration, and respect, we present this certificate as a remembrance of your years as a member of the Air and Space Force family. Ladies and gentlemen, General Raymond.
Secretary Austin, Secretary Kendall, Chairman Milley, distinguished guests, family, friends, and most importantly, guardians, thank you for honoring the Space Force, the Saltzmans, and Molly and me by attending today's ceremony. It is truly a special day as we welcome our Chief of Space Operations, General Saltzman, and his wife Jennifer, and their kids John and Sarah. The Raymonds and the Saltzmans families have been close friends for many, many years, and I can assure you that the Space Force is in great hands, and we look forward to them leading our new service to even greater heights. Salty, again, my sincere congratulations. Secretary Austin and General Milley, thank you for your steadfast leadership. The United States military has never been stronger or more ready than it is today, and it needs to be as we face the most complex strategic times in our nation's history. Personally, and on behalf of all of Guardians, thank you for your leadership and the absolute privilege to serve. Secretary Kendall, thank you for your strong leadership of the Department of the Air Force. There is no question that both the Air and Space Forces are better today because of your focus and the sense of urgency that you have instilled. It has been a privilege to serve on your team along with Undersecretary Jones. Thank you both. To General C.Q. Brown, it's been great to come to work every day and serve with someone I respect as a leader, an airman, and a friend. Molly and I have enjoyed serving closely with you and Shireen and look forward to staying connected to you in the years ahead. I would also like to thank my fellow members of the Joint Chiefs for being here. I have been privileged to serve alongside you on this really incredibly important team. I'd like to take a minute to say thanks to my transition lead, Colonel Jessica Weddington. Jessica, I can't thank you enough for all you have done to make this day and this last week's so special for both the Saltzmans and the Raymonds. And I also want to thank your assistant, Tech Sergeant Matt Paskey. Everything has been flawless, and I can't thank you enough. I also want to say a sincere thanks to my front office team, the whole first team, for all you have done. You know, it's pretty easy to come in and go to work. It's really hard to come in and have to build your job. And to do that and then continue to move the ball down the field is not easy. And again, as you've heard before, you all have made it look easy. So for everybody that I have had the privilege of serving with in the front office and the CSO team, my sincere thanks on behalf of Molly and I. So I stand here today, homeless, unemployed, but humbled and grateful for the opportunity to have served our nation for the past 38 years. Following in the footsteps, as you heard, of my great-great-grandfather and my relatives. Sir, you said you can't make this up, but I tell you, you've got good speechwriters that make a lot of stuff up. I was privileged to take an oath of office on 11 May 1984 at Clemson University, again, the Harvard of the South, when my dad administered the oath of office to me for the first time. And Second Lieutenant Raymond entered the family business of military service. 35 years later, in a hangar right there, just a few hundred yards from here, the National Defense Authorization Act was signed, and it stated, and I quote, "There is established a United States Space Force as an armed force within the Department of the Air Force. And thus, the United States Space Force was born, and it has been my highest honor to serve as the Chief of Space Operations." This is a team sport, and although there's been a lot said about me today, this is not done by Jay Raymond. This is done by the entire team. So I'd like to recognize a few folks, if I could. Former Secretary Barbara Barrett, ma'am, thank you. I was on Secretary Barrett's wing in the very early stages of establishment. And ma'am, I can't thank you enough for your leadership and your support and your vision that you provided us in the very early days that was so instrumental in where we are today. Thank you. General D.T. and Mary Thompson. D.T. is the hardest working and most brilliant officer I have had the privilege of serving with. And Mary is such a caring and dear friend for Molly and all of the Guardian families. D.T. and Mary, thank you for all you have done to help bring this service to life. We look forward to a lifetime of friendship. Chief Master Sergeant Toby Toberman and his wife Rachel, thank you for being incredible teammates in this adventure. Molly and I are incredibly grateful to have had the opportunity to serve with you. You know, in establishing the Space Force, the United States capitalized on an opportunity to elevate space to a level that's consistent with its importance to our national security and to ensure U.S. and global leadership in the domain. And just as the space domain was critical to winning the Cold War, the Space Force represents our nation's best opportunity to secure peace and deter great power conflict today and into the future. It's often said that the only way to predict the future is to create it. To the Guardians here today and stationed around the world, that's exactly what you have done, and I salute you. With the great support from the Department, from Congress, and I'd like to take a special moment to single out Congressman Cooper. You talk about General Raymond being the father of the Space Force. That's not true. This was bipartisan support of Congress, and there was two significant leaders in that, and that was Congressman Cooper and Congressman Rogers. Sir, thank you for being here. And with the support of multiple administrations, Guardians have taken a clause from the National Defense Authorization Act and turned it into a military service, delivering advantage to our nation and to our allies and partners today. Without a doubt, we are better postured and a more capable and ready force than we were just 3 short years ago. And although still in our terrible twos, we have attracted incredible talent, matured international partnerships, driven unity of effort across the department and interagency, strengthened our already close relationship with NASA and the National Reconnaissance Office, and advanced our relationships with commercial industry, designed a more resilient force structure, and advanced norms of responsible behavior. Starting with a clean sheet of paper to build a new surface is hard, but space is hard, and Guardians don't shy away from tough challenges. You thrive on them. Your big ideas of reshaping total force integration, recruiting, holistic health assessment, readiness, technology insertion, and creating a more fused relationship with commercial industry, a source of great strength. And I'd like to take a moment to thank our industry leadership that's here today. Elon Musk, sir, thank you for being here. Ray Acevedo, Jim Chilton, Tom Gould, Robert Lightfoot, Mr. Robertson, Tom Wilson, and Ed Joyce, thank you. To the airmen assigned to the Space Force, please know that you are an integral part of our team, and we rely on you daily, and you have never failed to support us. CQ and Chief Bass, would you do me a favor and please pass along my sincere thanks to the airmen that provide us such great support. As I look out at the audience today, I see leaders from our allies and partners around the world. Thank you for making the trip here to be with us, and thank you for your leadership and partnership. We are clearly stronger together. I also see dear friends dating all the way back to my 7th grade when I was a dependent in Germany with Dave Carson and his wife Sue. We're thrilled to have Kiefer and Shauna Thompson and Cooper here. Thompson Square, an incredible music group, and I will tell you, as great as they are singers, they are even greater supporters of our military, and I appreciate you very much. I also see coworkers from across my career, former mentors and bosses like Dr. Matt Daniels, Colonel Steve Sherwood, General Don Cook, General Bob Kaler, General Burt Field, General Willie Shelton, General Shags O'Shaughnessy, and General Hyten. Again, thank you so much for all your support and mentorship. I consider D.C. my home, and it has been great to live close to family. My mom, Barbara Raymond, my brother Greg and his wife Beth, 2 of their children, Jack and Sarah, are here. My sister Janet and her husband Bill are all here with us this morning. Mom, thank you to you and Dad for raising us in a manner consistent with the core values of military service. We're also excited that Molly's brother Dan and his wife Ginger and their son David and his wife Kayla flew in from Minnesota to be here. Thank you for being here. Almost 38 years ago, I arrived in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and met the love of my life, Molly, having coffee and donuts after church. Molly actually lived at the Catholic Newman Center and gave tours for free room and board. When she offered to give me a tour, I thought she was hitting on me. And once we started dating, all of the members in my squadron thought I was dating a nun. To quote a country music song by Walter Hayes, ever since then, I've been trying to keep her from figuring out that I married up and she married way, way down. For everyone that knows Molly, that's not hard to figure out. My friends were wrong. Molly isn't a nun, she's a saint. She's the bedrock of our family, and after all, she's had to put up with me for 35 years. I am so blessed to be her husband, and our Space Force family is lucky to have had her as their First Lady. She has worked tirelessly, making connections in history together with our Guardian families. Mr. Secretary, thank you for recognizing Molly with the Distinguished Public Service Award. She was way, way more effective and impactful than I could ever be. Molly and I are blessed with 3 wonderful children. Molly and I are blessed with 3 wonderful children. Military children also serve their country. All 3 of our kids attended 3 different high schools. moved in the middle of school years, had to make new friends frequently, had to fight hard for positions on soccer teams and football teams. I think they would each tell you they wouldn't trade it for the world. They are more resilient, have a more worldly view, and have grown up to be incredible young adults. Christine, as was mentioned, works at Wounded Warrior Project in their marketing department. She is a newlywed, and her husband Nick and his parents, Brenda and Paul Wilson, and Nick's brother Evan and his wife Erica also flew in from Minnesota to be here with us today. Amy's a third grade teacher in Springfield, Virginia. She is the perfect teacher and a beautiful young lady. We are so proud of her. She has just completed her master's degree in education, and her students are lucky to have her as a teacher. Our son Gary will graduate from Yale this December, and is a tight end, as you heard, on the football team. Gary spent the night on a train and almost didn't make it here because there was an electrical wire across the train track, which made him sleep in a tunnel on a train for about an extra 2.5 hours, and got here right as we were walking out. Gary, thank you. It's an honor to have you here, and it meant a lot that you took all that effort to be here. So as my career re-enters the atmosphere and comes to an end back on Earth, let me say again, thank you. It has truly been a privilege and an honor to serve our great country and do so with family, friends, and the incredible team of Guardians and Airmen that I have been lucky to serve with each and every day. I'll close by circling back to our Space Force Guardians. Go invent your future. You are serving during the most complex strategic environment we have ever faced, amidst a significant shift in the character of war. The United States is a spacefaring nation, and space is at the center of this shift. We are at the hinge of history, and you will attract new generations of America into service to make sure that we always compete, deter, and God forbid if deterrence were to fail, to win. America can sleep well, as I hope to do starting tonight, because you are always above, ensuring the security of the United States and our allies. Semper Supra.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Air Force Band's ceremonial brass will now play a special musical selection in honor of General Raymond. and gentlemen, the men and women of the United States Space Force are proud to have served with General Raymond and wish him and Mrs. Raymond every success in their future endeavors. The United States Space Force also extends a warm welcome to General and Mrs. Saltzman. Please rise and remain standing for the playing of the Space Force song, Semper Supra, and the departure of the official party. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the ceremony. Please join Secretary Kendall in congratulating General and Mrs. Saltzman in the receiving line at the center of the hangar. There will be a reception immediately following on the left side of the hangar. Please remain at your seats until an usher directs you to depart. Thank you for your patience, and we wish you a pleasant day.